In the studio with me is Larry Devore. Welcome to Daryl's Little Corner.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming.
Yes, ma'am.
You're running from Supervisor,
I am, first district.
First District. Tell us where your district is.
Well, it covers from Benton County line to Alcorn County line on the very north end of Tipper County, and comes all the way up to Faulkner. Covers a good portion of the Faulkner area, then makes a teardrop and kind of goes west from there.
They changed them this time, didn't they?
Yeah, they even incorporated a couple of precincts together. I think they put in Providence and Cleveland as one box this time. So
Really?
yeah, that'll be a big box.
Tell us a little about yourself. Where were you raised?
I was raised right here in Tipper County. I've been here all my life.
Who's your parents?
Mike Devore is my dad.
Mike.
Yep. Bobby Devore is my granddaddy, which is my dad's father, and my mother is Debbie Brown. My grandparents on that side was Miss Catherine Brown. A lot of people knew her. Her brother was Billy Hughes, which was also a supervisor for several years.
Billy Hughes.
Yep, he's my great uncle. So
yes, and too, I think Catherine. I believe I knew her a long time ago. Long time. You went to school local.
Yep, Walnut.
Are you married?
I am. I'm married to Candace Gates. Got 3 kids. Got 3 boys. I've got one boy that'll be 20 in August. One that just turned 19, and I've got another one that's 10. So that's Will, Cole, and River.
And you have survived 3 boys.
I have.
Good.
One of them works at G&M Construction out here on the asphalt crew. The other one's in aviation school, and then the other one's at Walnut Elementary.
Where do you work?
I am self-employed. I've been doing construction work for over 20 years. I run Devore Construction. I build homes for people right here in Tipper County. Been doing it a long time. I've run 2 multi-million-dollar businesses in my career. One of them was an oil company. We worked about 5 states. And then I was a plant manager at American Furniture that burned a few years ago. Was over about 1,200 employees there for 2 or 3 years. So I've had a good bit of experience. I've worked for the public and worked, for corporate. I've been on a couple different water boards. I was a fire chief at Spout Springs out here on Highway 2 for about 7 or 8 years. I was on that department for about 12 years. I'm currently on the North Tipper School Board. I've been on it for 2.5 years, so I've served the community for a long time.
Being in construction, that's a qualification.
It's kind of a dying breed.
Yeah, it is.
People don't like getting splinters in their hands and don't like working when it's cold or when it's hot, so it's just part of the trade to me.
My last husband was Shirley Wayne Brock. He did construction. He worked for Mike Roberts down here for years. He and Fagan worked together for years and years, and after, then the last few years he worked for Mike Roberts. So that's just what he liked to do.
I love it. I don't know, it's a pleasure behind it, I guess, of starting something from dirt and
it is.
Locking the door and handing the key to the owner.
He'd say, I built that porch. Yeah. I worked on that house, We did this or we did that, he never forgot where he worked.
It's been very good to me.
It's a lot of pride in it. He enjoyed that. Now, several years ago, the county voted in a new system. Now, we were on what they called a beat system. Now they call it a unit system. They kind of unified stuff. Can you explain that to us, and does it work, or how does it work, or what do you know about it?
I know it took a lot in my eyes as a voter, never being in the system, as I call it. It took a lot off of the supervisor's plate. I think it in my personal opinion, I think in a way it kind of hurt the county. And when I say hurt the county, it hurt the county in a way that the voters didn't really have a direct call, or they don't have a direct call to the supervisor anymore.
That's true.
To get a lot of stuff done.
That's true.
Because now, the buck can be passed to somebody else, and I do understand that some of these supervisors still are able to get things done when the people call, but it wasn't quite like it was back several years ago.
No.
Now, they say it saved a lot of money. I don't know. I have a lot of questions. That's one of the biggest reasons why I'm running. There's a lot of things I want to know. There's a lot of things that I want to find. I want to find out for myself. I want to dig down to the bottom of some sources and some things all the way up to the state level instead of just county. I want to know what can and can't be done for myself.
I remember when you'd call your supervisor, you had a pothole at the end of your driveway. Before dark, it was fixed. But now they got to send somebody else out there. And now they tell me he's got an assistant.
Yes, ma'am. Are
we not paying a lot of salaries?
Well, those questions, unfortunately, I can't answer because I haven't been in that system. I don't know how everything works.
I've just told that. I don't know.
I don't know either.
That's our problem. We don't know.
We don't.
We need to be informed.
Well, that's a problem with a lot of things in Temple County.
Yes, it is.
Is everything is kept a big hush-hush secret, and in my eyes, if it's kept a secret, then something ain't exactly right.
Yeah.
I personally think, what you just said goes a long way with some of the answers that I have. I can't promise anybody that I'll make the roads better. I can't promise anybody that, that I can save the world or, change everything. But in my eyes, living in the 20th century, 2023, I still live basically on the same road that I was living on when I was going to school, when I first started driving. And that road today and the road surrounding it is worse now than they was then. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not pointing my fingers at anybody. I'm just stating facts. And it's crazy to me that we've come to a time to where the technology is so great and we have resources that we never had before. And then our infrastructure is steadily going downhill. And to me, that doesn't make sense. We go down these county roads, and over the last 8 or 9 months, since this is year 4, it's election time.
Yeah.
A lot of these roads have been gone over with this chip seal stuff, and they go through there and they clean the road off and they spray it, and then they put down gravel. Well, now 7 or 8 months later, I know in the district I live in, and I'm sure it's this way everywhere. It is pretty much everywhere I've been. We have shoulders on the side of our roads now. Instead of falling over into our side ditches, we have shoulders of this rock that we all taxpayers pay for.
Yeah.
Because it didn't stay where they put it for some odd reason. Why, I don't know. But it's all now on the shoulders of roads, and none of it's in the road anymore. And the same potholes are right back where they was 7 months later. So I personally, I want to know why we keep doing the same thing over and over, getting the same results when it's not working. That's, I feel like that the knowledge and the work ethic of the people here in the county should have enough brain power to put something together better than what we have now.
I have a place at Faulkner on one of those roads. And like I say, it's all on the side of the road, but it did stop the dust problem. It did calm the dust down. But they're constantly having to do something to that road.
That's correct. And that's another question I got. These county workers we got, I feel like do a pretty good job with what they're furnished to work with. And when you're taking coal mix and putting in a pothole that's already 5 or 6 inches deep, and you pat it down with a shovel and you never run over it with a roller or anything, I know every time I go home after they do it, my tires pull it up out of the pothole and sling it all over my truck and all over the road where it ain't nothing wrong with it. And then in a matter of 8 or 9 weeks, with me and everybody else running through there, that pothole is existing again, and they're coming right back and putting stuff in it. And that goes on year round. And I just feel like that we can, even though it may cost a little bit more money on the front end, if we take into effect the fuel we burn going to them potholes, the product we use going in them potholes, and the labor that we burn up putting stuff in them potholes over a year's time repeatedly, that number has to be put in play also to really see if we are spending that much more money, versus what we're spending now, just patching. So that's just my thought process on it. Those are the questions. Those are the questions I have.
Yeah, that's the problem. We're not told.
That's right.
We don't know. Driving on the roads in your district, what would you improve? What would you do first?
Well, I can't say what I can do. That's the whole thing.
What would you want to do?
My biggest thing is, and this is just me knowing a little bit about asphalt business, because when I was in the oil company, what I'd done, or what the business I was running, what we done as a business, is we went and collected used oil from all over the country. And we cleaned it and we sold it as a burner fuel to asphalt companies. So I got to learn a little bit about asphalt. And if that stuff's not at a certain temperature, this, that, and the other, it's just no good. You might as well not even put it out. So I guess the first thing I would want to do is find out what I could do, find out what the money is going to allow you to do in a year's time. And I made this statement to a guy the other day. I said, as a taxpayer, and I said, I know there'll be a lot of aggravated people up front, but I would rather see 2 roads done right, or 1 road a year done right in each district, is I had to keep throwing money, taxpayer money, in a hole to be pulled back out, or to cover up a mess to make it look good for a few months, and then everything be on the sides of the roads. Because I know for a fact the road I lived on as a kid that I still drive every day, that thing ain't been redone as far as asphalt, because it was truly asphalt back in the day, and it held up for 30 years. So if we're doing this every 4 years to make it look good, plus 3 years worth of patching potholes, can we do 1 road a year per district the right way versus doing them all, patching them, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, if the budgeting's there or whatever the case may be, I don't know, maybe there's some federal grant money. That's another question I ask. How many grants are being written for Tippah County every year? Have we hired a grant writer? There's so much money out there now, and I know this personally because of dealing with the school systems, and it's also on the county level, because when I was on the water board, I just resigned about 6 or 8 months ago, and the reason why I resigned, it was just too much between school board and running a business, and then had that too. And we had some individuals actually in this district that I'm running for. They had high-speed internet, but didn't have running water. And it blew my mind. And I work with those people. I work with the commissioner, went to a bunch of meetings just because I wanted to help these people. And come to find out that there were money there. But now these people are fixing to get water. So
if you don't put in for it, you don't get it.
We worked as a team. We worked as a team, and everybody was involved. The supervisor's there now. He was at every meeting. He was involved with it, and but it took some firm doing in that situation, because what they wanted to do, because Three Forks was the only one that was willing to help these people at the time. They wanted us to take on a $500,000 note with no interest. That's what they kept telling us. And I was like, "There's no way. That's financial suicide to take on 30 customers
Yeah.
for $500,000." Well, when it all come down to it, we didn't have to pay anything. The county ended up getting the money, or the state ended up getting the money. The county paid some of it through another pile of money that was federal government money, and now these people are going to get water. So, and my question was, and that's another reason why I wanted to run, it shined a big old light on me that, this started in 22, I think, early 22. And I was just floored that an elderly lady spoke at one of those meetings. And she said, I never thought that I would see the day we'd have high-speed internet. And she said, now here we have one of the fastest internets in the world, and I don't even have access to running water. And that blowed me away, and that showed me how weak that our infrastructure was.
It is.
So, that kind of opened my eyes.
It's hard to, it's hard to get your mind around that somebody in this day and age.
That's correct.
Does not have running water.
That's correct.
I mean, it just.
And what happened was those people, were all working off wells. And even a couple of families were sharing the same wells.
Uh-huh.
And lightning struck one of the wells from a younger couple. And they went to calling around trying to get a well fixed. And they was telling them 8 or 9 months. And that's how this ball started rolling. And because of a particular lady, that it was her home. And she pushed it. And she pushed it hard. And when she come to me and asked the board at the Water Association, if we would be willing to help. And I said, I'll do whatever I got to do. And I did. I followed it to the end, and once I seen that it was going to get done, and like I said, the school board was, the school system was needing me more than I thought was going to be needed. Mm-hmm. And it just become overbearing. It become too much. So I just went ahead and stepped down off the water board. But I seen that through. And now the money's there, and I think the work's going to start pretty soon. So
that's good, because these elderly folks, they live on Social Security.
Yes.
And it's not enough. If you don't, especially if you're having to pay rent and your overhead is high, you can't afford to fix a well.
That's right.
You're talking $4,000 or $5,000 drop a well at least, maybe more.
They were telling during those meetings, they were throwing up the number 10 and 15,000 pretty regular. Ooh. So, but the fact is, when you ain't got running water and you got a baby in the house, and
that's right.
It's bad.
Yes,
it's bad. At this day and time, it's really bad.
It is.
But it's.
Tippah County, you would think in Tippah County that we wouldn't have that problem, but we do.
Well,
but now they have it in other counties too.
I was floored. I was blown away with it. It really made me look at things a little different, as far as why. Why have we not fixed this already?
That's right.
Why have we, if we're maintaining this road, why have we not tried to find grants, state aid money, federal money, whatever the case may be, not only to make sure that there's water lines running down that road, but natural gas as well, And I understand that there's a little bit more to it, because I have run a few miles of 4-inch water line myself, and hooked up meters and the whole 9 yards, but I know it's a little bit more to it than just running fiber optics through the air.
It is.
But my point is, behind that is, there's got to be a way to get into the system and start hitting at it, just like you do a tree, with an axe. You hit at it, and finally it's going to be done, and it's going to fall. But if you never take that axe and sharpen it and start swinging it, then we're always going to be sitting right where we're at.
When people think of their supervisor, they think roads.
That's right.
But it's a lot more than that.
It's a whole lot more than that.
It's
a whole lot more than that.
They conduct business for all of the county facilities.
Yes, ma'am.
Everything to do with the county. which is harder to maintain, a dirt road or a paved? Now, I know you get rid of the dust, but I mean, which would be, do you think would be harder to keep up? Because you got the patch and potholes, and then now if it's dirt roads, you got all that grader work to do.
You do. And that's manpower and fuel and wear and tear on a grader and so on and so forth. But in my eyes, my whole thought process is with my idea of maybe paving one road in each district a year the right way, is then at that time, you've got to let your farmers and your loggers that have these harvest permits, you've got to let them harvest their goods.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's how they make their living. But there's a lot of times that you can route these guys. They may have to go 2 or 3 miles out of their way, but you can route them and keep them off of these better roads until we get them where they need to be. And the other thing is, if they're done right, they'll hold up weight. These that we've got now won't hold up weight. You can unload, and I know this personally. I didn't unload it at my house, but I have run my mini track hoe that weighs 11,000 pounds from one driveway to another at my house to keep from tearing up my yard. And I've got rubber tracks. I don't have steel tracks. And when I barely turn my machine just a little bit to turn it, I have to watch what I'm doing. If I just turned it in the road, it would tear the asphalt plumb up. What's there? I don't even know it's asphalt there. I think it's just tar and gravel, but that's the difference, I think. And that's why I say, it's like I said earlier, the road that I lived on when I was a kid, that road has been there forever. They've logged hundreds of acres out of there. There's been tons and tons of fertilizer brought down that road, big tractors, big equipment. My daddy pulls a bulldozer in and out of there a lot, on a truck. And it's never really hurt that road. Now, it's damaged it over the years, but it's 30 years, It's 30 years worth of use that I know for sure it's been 30 years. And that's probably the best road there now. So, to me, if you do it right to begin with, anything worth doing as right as you can do it. And if it takes pushing this off for 6 months to do this right one time and be done with it, then that's how I'd rather do it. Even if you have to push something off for a year, 2 years, I would rather do this right here right 100% where I ain't got to go back and touch this no more. Yeah. Not only that, the county hands ain't got to go back down that road no more. They ain't got to worry about it. So once you do that for a long period of time, then it's over. It's done. Then you can start preparing to go back to the first ones and go over it again.
Yeah, you're right. What is a state-maintained road, do you know?
I don't know what a state-maintained road. I know what state aid means. That's whenever I got involved with this, whenever I was on one of the water associations, which is where I live now. And we had a lot of our main line on what they called the working right-of-way of the road. So what happens, the way I understood it, I'm not 100% sure how it works, but the way I understood it, that the county puts in for some major job to be done, such as a road. In this case, it was a concrete cupboard and a road, and they wanted to straighten this section of road because it was very bad. It was hard to work. It was hard to deal with. And this has been the end of 19 or maybe the first of 2020. But me and the president at the time, I wasn't president when this happened. Me and the president at the time, we got several bids to redo that mile of 4-inch line because they had to have it as for the state aid for the state to come in there and redo the road. They had to have us to move the utility off of it. Tip Electric also as well had to move theirs.
I remember that.
And we got several bids, and it was very, very, very costly. And the state, according to the supervisor, the state was only going to pay X amount of dollars for us to move that water line. So anyway, once we found out what it was going to cost to move it, then me and the maintenance guy there and the president decided we'd do it for the water department, and we moved all the line with the maintenance guy because he's got all the certifications and stuff, and then got it inspected by the state after we was done and all that. But what ended up happening is the cupboard got put in. To this day, there still ain't been no road fixed. So there was people that moved fences, there was people that wrote off easements, there was people that done all this stuff, and that road still ain't been touched. So the true, what happens with state aid work, I really don't know. It's kind of to me like the whole 15 highway out here.
Yeah,
it's completed everywhere but in Tippah County, and Tippah County got the money the same time these other counties did. And I know that because some of these houses was bought from people up through here and moved out of the way. So that's some more questions I got. That's some more digging I want to know about.
People gave up their homes, and I know one lady in particular that died in a nursing home because they made her move. She had nowhere else to go when she went to nursing home. And she's dead now. She could have lived out her life in her home.
That's sad.
Yes, it is. To me, that's very sad. And do you think that if we get the 4-lane, which they say now that it's some kind of a bill that's going before the governor, do you think that this 4-lane, how do you think that's going to affect our county? Walnut is already growing. Walnut's just taking off by leaps and bounds.
Walnut is growing. We got our second red light.
You're doing great.
We got our second red light. But no, actually Walnut's growing.
Yes, they
there's
are.
some good things going on at Walnut.
Businesses
We've got
coming in.
I think that there's fixing to break ground on
Is it on kind of the road?
Do it now?
Is it because of the road, or are they just?
I think it's multiple reasons. I think the board is kind of accepting change a little bit better than they have in the past years. That's my opinion.
It's took off for growing.
But we also have a few what I call giants as far as money people in the area that are pushing that up that way pretty hard. They had a big part to do with, bringing in the Loves and the Jacks and that kind of stuff. So now we've got a charcoal plant fixing to break ground.
Ooh.
They bought 200 acres right there close to the landfill. So that's going to go in. They say it's going to be a real good paying job. I think the 4-lane will make a huge difference through the county all the way around. And the reason why I say that is if you travel 78 and you see how many trucks are on 78 highway, I mean, it's astronomical. And it's a pretty good large amount on 72. But when you compare how many's going down 72 and how many's going down 78 versus how many's coming down 15, it's a very small number. Once this thing gets 4-lane from interstate to interstate, then there's going to be a reason for municipality to be even bigger here. So, I feel like that's why we didn't get looked at as the Toyota, when the Toyota thing come in here.
I think so too.
I feel like we lost a lot of opportunity on that just because we drug our feet.
And we lost a lot of tax money,
We drug our feet.
Yes, we did.
And
A lot of jobs.
I know that a lot of people are getting cuts that own these businesses, and I understand. I think they should get a certain amount of cut. But at the same time, I don't feel like it's right for your local guy that's got a business not to get the same tax cut as your big guy.
That's right.
So, I think it needs to be a very fair playing field whenever you set a number like that. Because what's fair for the big guy ought to be fair for the little guy.
That's right.
And that's how I feel about that.
Because they kind of squeeze the little guy out.
That's what happens a lot. And I try to do business with the small people, I do a lot. I buy a lot of material every year. And I do buy some things at Lowe's and Home Depot and stuff like that, but I try to keep my money out of those places only because I know what it's like to run a business, and they get you everywhere they can as far as taxes, And then
They do.
I hear about and even read in the newspaper about these big corporations getting another tax break, another this and another that. And our little guys
Got nothing.
that have been here all this time, they didn't move in here and start. They started right here.
Yeah.
They ain't getting nothing. And I just disagree with it. I don't see how that's right in anybody's eyes.
It's not. Now, the Tippah County Hospital got this gorgeous new building. Did the supervisors play a part in that? Is
I
that
think they did play a big part in that.
and would you be in favor of that?
I would have to look at numbers. You know, that I'm a numbers guy. I do know that building was in very, very bad shape.
Yes, it was.
But here's the question I got with that. It's kind of like our schools in some of this, in part of Tippah County. These schools was built in 1800s, some of them early 1900s. I think the hospital was built in 1955.
I think so. Back
My
there
question
somewhere.
is, was it maintained right? My question is,
It was outdated.
but that's part of maintenance. That's
When
part
my
of.
husband was there, I noticed that the door facings, they were metal. And at the bottom, they were rusted off. I mean, for about that high up.
Yeah.
It was just rusted.
Well, that's what I was asking. My
It's just worn out.
there's a lot of old homes right here in Ripley.
Yes, it is.
Perfect example. You ride downtown, there's some pretty homes there. They've been maintained.
Yes.
Some of
They're
them homes
redone.
was built way before that hospital was.
They've been redone.
And I feel like that's one of the questions I would have about the hospital was, was it maintained right? Was it kept up? And the only reason why I got those questions is because it don't need to happen again.
That's right.
Another set of supervisors 50 years from now don't need to be fighting that same battle to
That's
build
right.
another hospital.
That's right. Well, he tells me we're out of time. I appreciate you coming.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for having me.
Larry Devore, District 1, running for supervisor, August the 8th. Write that name down. Larry Devore. And good luck. Hope
Thank
did
you, ma'am.
great.
Have a good evening.
In the studio with me tonight is Benny Jackson. Now, I had down that he was running for Justice Court Judge, but he's already judge, aren't you?
That's true.
How about that? He's the Justice Court Judge in the north half. That'd be up around Walnut and Faulkner. Welcome to Daryl's Little Corner.
Thank you. Thanks for
Glad you
having me.
came. I'm glad you came. We've been sitting here talking, and I didn't know I was so dumb. I didn't know nothing. Why did you decide, of course, I know why this time, but why did you decide you wanted to be a judge?
Well, I'd been interested in politics for a long time, a number of years, and would always think about running for office, and my wife would always talk me out of it. And so 4 years ago, I prayed about it a lot. And I believe that this is an opportunity, this job is an opportunity to shine a light in a dark place. I deal with people that are down on their luck, they're in a dark place in their life. And I don't try to beat them up, I try to help them if I can, if they will allow me to help them. And so I feel like it's a ministry to me. It is a job, and I do get paid, but I do believe, to me, it's a ministry. It's a chance to reach people that are having a hard time in their life. And so I prayed about it a lot, and I was afraid to approach my wife, and it was getting close to time to announce, and she asked me, "Are you not going to run for Justice Court Judge?" And so I felt like that was my answer that I'd prayed for. So that's what got me started.
That's great. That's great. Oh, Tell us, were you from here?
Yes, born and raised here. My dad was J.C. Jackson, Coach Jackson. A lot of people knew him as. My mom was Callie Gillard Jackson.
Which
My-
Gillards?
My last surviving uncle, Jimmy Gillard, just passed away about a month ago.
Oh,
Bernice Gillard, Jimmy Gillard.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Miss Ollie Smith, Greg Smith. Do you know Greg?
I don't know
He's
Greg.
on tip electric board. He's my first cousin. His mom
I
was
probably know him when I
Gillard.
see
Yeah.
him, but I
But
don't
there's a
know
lot
the
of
name.
Gillards out around Buena Vista area. But that's my family, and
Are
we
you are you kin to the panels?
No.
Not the
not
panels.
that I'm aware of.
Not the panels. But you're kin to Bill and Jim
I
Jackson.
am. Yeah, a lot of Jacksons in Faulkner.
Yeah, there are a lot of Jacksons in Faulkner. Yes, dears. Good fellas. Good
But,
fellas.
We lived, I mean, with the exception of 5 years that we lived at Ashland, I've lived in Tippah County all my life. So
Do you have children?
I do. I have 2 girls. My oldest daughter passed away a few years ago. My youngest girl lives with us, Hannah. And, my wife, Wanda Garrison, Mr. Harold Jean Garrison, and Miss Margaret Garrison out at between Buena Vista and Dumas. And that's my mother-in-law and father-in-law.
What kind of work did you do?
I worked in the insurance business with my dad. My dad had an independent insurance agency for several years. Matter of fact, it still has the sign on it, Jackson Insurance Agency.
Yeah,
But
I know where that's at.
he retired and sold that business, and it remained Jackson Insurance Agency. But I started working for Benchcraft, and I worked for Benchcraft for, I believe, 16 years, and they were going through a lot of changes and beginning to move away from here. And I started work for Oil Dry, Blue Mountain Production in Blue Mountain. And I worked there 15 years, and I retired. And retirement is okay, but I got kind of bored, and so
I hate retirement.
that's one reason I decided to run for office.
Okay, let's talk qualifications.
Well, really the only qualifications for justice court judge is a high school diploma or a GED, and be a citizen of Tippah County. And
I bet a lot of folks didn't know that,
then
because I didn't know that.
the qualifications, if you get elected, there are qualifications once you are elected that a lot of people are not aware of. If you're elected, the first thing you have to do is attend school for 2 weeks. And at the end of those 2 weeks, you have an exam to take that is not easy. It's kind of hard, to be honest
Well,
with you.
What happens if you fail that exam?
Well, they'll give you, I believe it's 3 opportunities to retake it, or maybe only 2, maybe 3 altogether. I don't recall. But I don't know that I can answer that question. If you fail 3 times, I'm not sure what would happen. I don't
I
know.
just
that
wonder,
that's-
I mean, because you're elected.
Yeah.
That's an elected position. I just wonder what they'd do if anybody could not do it.
I don't know that we talked about that, but there have been people that had to take it at least twice. I don't know about 3 times, but I'm sure you would get some tutoring to help you along. But once you do take that exam and pass it, then every year, whoever's elected, ever how many judges there are in the county or in the state, we all have to go to training twice a year. We have a school once in the springtime. Matter of fact, it's coming up in about 3 more weeks.
Oh, bless your heart.
And it will be, normally it's 3 days. And normally in springtime we have it in Philadelphia at the resort down there, and usually in the fall it's in Biloxi. So you have to go twice a year, and kind of like in-service training, you get a certificate from the state, and you have to turn it in to the Chancery Clerk's office here, and that's required by law. So you have to be recertified through training every year.
Well, I'd say likely as not, they wouldn't let you take office if you couldn't pass the test.
Well, no, ma'am, I don't think you could. I don't really know what they would do.
I don't know.
If you could not pass the test, I'm assuming that they would have to have a special election. But I don't know. I can't really answer that
I don't
question.
have a clue. That's something we might check into and find out what. Now we're getting nosy. I want to know. Okay, according to Google, Justice Court does a lot of stuff, a lot more than what I ever thought. It's a job, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am, it really is.
It's a full-time thing.
It's, I guess, metaphorically speaking, if you compare it to something that's, you're actually on call 24/7. We have court so many days a week, so many weeks out of the month. And, but you may be called anytime, day or night, by a sheriff's deputy, a city policeman, a game warden, someone from the Attorney General's office, the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics, Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, Highway Patrol. They can all call you wanting you to issue a search warrant.
Why would a game warden want a search warrant?
Well,
Just curious.
that, for the most part, game wardens have more authority than any other law enforcement
Really?
official. If they're, and I don't want to get into the specifics of it because I might misstate myself, but they have more authority to search someone than the average law enforcement officer.
I didn't know that.
But they too have to have, in certain instances, they have to have search warrants. But, I mean, I've had the Attorney General's office send an agent up here, and they call me and say, you know, we need a search warrant. Are you going to be in your office? And so, you know, I just tell them, yeah, I'll be there in a few minutes.
Well, that's something to think about, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a lot more complicated job
Yes,
than
it
the
is.
average person realizes.
Yes, it is. And you need folks in this job that have not only education, but common sense.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Common
ma'am.
sense.
Uh,
In court, when you go to court, you deal with people that don't pay their bills, don't you?
you do.
Finance companies.
That is extensively in civil court. If you have, we have civil court twice a month.
All right, now you do that.
I do that.
You do that.
And so, civil court, the majority of civil court will be finance companies. It will be credit card debt. It will be check cashing places. It can be medical debt, like hospital, radiology departments. If the person lives in the county, then, you know, it doesn't matter. The medical companies can sue for their debts just like the credit card companies do. And then you have, of course, evictions, which is my least favorite thing about being a justice court judge.
Yes. Yes, it is. But this credit card and finance company, people just won't stuff so much till they charge this and charge that. Sometimes it's necessities, but
Yes,
most of
ma'am.
the time it's not.
I agree. And
We
a lot
need
of
to.
times, you know that those people standing there with that credit card debt are having an awful hard time making ends
Yeah.
meet. You know that.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, they've signed an agreement, a contract, that
Well,
they will
that
pay that money back.
well, that company that can't stay in business if they don't
That's
collect their
right.
money back.
That's right.
I mean, I can see it on both
And,
sides.
mhm.
But you got to learn to live within your means.
Yes, ma'am, I
You
agree.
got to learn to budget your money and live within your means. And just 'cause it glitters don't mean you need it.
That's right.
It just, we need to learn to not want so much.
That's right.
It's not the things that we need, it's the things that we see that glitter and we want.
There's a lot of difference between wants and needs.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you got to have some common sense when it comes to credit cards and you run up a bill with a finance company, you're going to pay interest on it.
Yes,
If you
ma'am.
can't afford it to start with, you sure can't afford the interest.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
a few years ago, maybe so, but now the economy is so tight till you need to really pray about it before you go in debt.
It is, and just the bank interest rate, is gone
Yes.
up quite a bit recently, and that
Mhm.
makes the credit card interest rate, and it just goes up
Well,
from there. So
credit cards and finance companies, most of them, I'm not saying all, but most of them have that revolving charge
mhm.
where you pay a minimum amount and then nothing, it just goes on the interest.
Yes, ma'am. But
You can be paying on a $500 bill, forever.
yes, ma'am. But keep in mind, civil court is also a monetary limit. $3,500 is the monetary limit that we can recover, that you could sue for.
Uh-huh.
Now that 3,500, the court cost can be added to that, but 3,500 is the limit on monetary cost, and if it's more than that, then it has to go to a higher court.
Okay. But it's really, this economy makes it hard to start with, and if you go out and you run up credit card and finance companies, and you wind up where you're borrowing from one to pay the other.
That's right.
That's bad news.
Yes, ma'am.
Bad news. But people that have children, I mean, it's tough to make it now.
Yes, ma'am, it is. But
It
there's
just
plenty
is.
of jobs out there if
Yes, it
somebody's
is.
willing to work.
That's right.
That's a problem we have with a lot of our other side of the court is in justice court. We have to interview the people on initial appearance when they've been arrested, and they go before by federal law. They have to go before a judge within 48 hours and have a bond set. And there's some questions you ask them, and just a whole lot of the people that we give initial appearance to or arraignments to do not work. And so they have to provide some way, and a lot of times that's the wrong way. And that's why they wind up there.
That's hard.
Just a lot of them don't work, and sadly, a lot of them are on disability. They're drawing a government check, and they're sitting in jail.
Well, do you still draw when you're in jail?
I can't answer that.
I
I
don't
guess
know
it
either.
would be depending on the crime you committed and your record.
I don't
I'm
know.
assuming you could lose the benefits, but we don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, let's talk about evictions. Now that's hard especially if they've got children.
It is.
That's
It
hard.
is.
That would be hard to tell somebody they had to
It
move.
is.
But then you got to look too that the homeowner, the one that owns that house, is trying to keep it up and pay taxes on it, and, you know, and they've got to have that rent money to keep the house up.
Well, there's a lot of, the landlords that have a mortgage on their property, and
That's right.
they've got to pay their bills too.
That's
And,
right.
you know, as I said before, that's the thing that I like the least about my job is evictions. Because I have compassion for those people that you're standing there putting them out of a house, and they've got 7 days to get all their stuff out and get, you know, and move and find another place. And
And there's no,
You know,
no rental property
no,
to mount
ma'am.
anything. Hard to
but
find.
you also have to understand is that process it just didn't start on that day. It started several days
Yes.
before that when they were
Yes.
notified that they were being evicted.
Mhm.
And so they've all had time to look for a place, you know. But again, it's just
You know, if you pay your rent and you take care of the house, likely as not, you're not gonna get evicted.
that's right.
That's the
That's right.
thing. When it's sad is when, like, maybe a man loses his job, or maybe is struck sick
Hmm.
and can't work. You know, that's when it's heartbreaking.
But for the most part, the landlords that I come in contact with are willing to work with that person if they will go and talk to them.
Yeah.
They will work with them as long as the renter will do what they say they will. Usually the landlord will bend over backwards to help them.
I
If they
agree.
don't do any of that, then, you
I
know,
agree. Most of them will. Most of them will. And I tell you what, it takes forever to get on disability. When you know, when you become disabled, it takes forever to get a check started.
does it.
And it's really difficult for the family.
I've heard a lot of people say that it was,
It's really difficult for the family. And, you know, my heart just goes out to them.
it does.
It does.
It does.
But that's my problem. My heart goes out to people.
Yeah.
That's my problem. Because you got to understand, too, that landlord has got, you know, it's not like everything's free to them.
No, ma'am.
They've
No,
got
ma'am.
upkeep. They've got, you know, if a storm comes through, they got to repair that storm damage. We had one recently, and tore the porches off of two of my places. And I had to have that repaired, and, you know, that's got to come out of that rent money.
Sure it does.
And if you don't have the rent money, well, then there you are. It's just the way it is. But if they can't work, see, it's kind of bad on both sides. It just is. You can't hardly find a rental house to rent in Tippah County. I wonder why that is. I mean, people get out of it because I think they can't come out on it.
I don't know. There's a few landlords that have numerous rental properties, and you know, I see them in court more so than I do people that just have one or two. So I don't know. I would have to assume that there's money to be made at it, but what their business acumen is, I don't know. They know what they're doing, or they wouldn't be doing
I know
it.
it's hard when people, like when my house comes empty. I have a long list of people that are looking for a place to move in, and you just have to pray about it because you don't know. I mean, you don't know anything about them people, you know. It's tough on both sides. Okay, you deal with up to $3,500,
In civil code,
claims.
yes, ma'am.
and then a misdemeanor. What's a misdemeanor?
I guess
I found that word.
a minor mistake or a minor infraction. A misdemeanor is a minor crime, or I don't guess crime is the best way to put it, but misdemeanor is a minor mistake is the best way I can
Just
define
not as
that.
serious.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And civil cases, what's the difference in a civil case and a misdemeanor? Is a civil
Well, a
case more
misdemeanor
serious?
is going to be, for instance, any traffic offense that you're charged with. Then you have numerous misdemeanors that can be a felony. The difference is the penalty. For instance, you can have different crimes. Let's just say sexual crimes in nature. Those are going to be felonies. If you have a rape, enticement of a child, anything like that is a serious crime. But you can have, believe it or not, domestic violence is a misdemeanor. The domestic violence, one conviction is a misdemeanor, the second conviction is a misdemeanor, and then after that, it is a felony. So you have malicious mischief, you have felony malicious mischief. What differentiates those two is the amount of damage the person causes. And you have different fines. Your fines are determined by the legislature. So if you have something that calls for a minimum $600 fine up to a maximum $1,000 fine, then that's not necessarily what you're going to see when you go pay it. You may have the court costs and everything added into that. Our fine may be $600, but by the time you pay court costs and everything, it could be over $700. And this is something that changed last July. People are beginning to be aware of, but I would like to touch on that. On domestic violence and on simple assault, which are both misdemeanors. The previous fine for that was, I believe, fines and court costs was, I believe, around $530, something like that. But beginning July 1 of last year, the legislature passed a bill in this statewide law that the Attorney General's office assesses a $1,000 fee, an assessment, on top of your fine for domestic violence or simple assault. And what that fee goes to is the Sex Trafficking Act, which I believe the money is going to a justifiable cause and a good cause. I just don't believe that piggybacking it on the simple assault and domestic violence is not necessarily the best way to do it, but that's what the legislature passed, so that's what we have to do.
What you have to do.
Yeah.
I have a problem with that. When does it become domestic violence escalated from an argument with your, say, husband or wife?
Well, you can file a domestic violence charge if you feel threatened by bodily harm. It doesn't necessarily have to be actual.
Is it the wife or husband has to file it? Or can...
Well, it depends. If you want to, if you're a victim of domestic violence, or feel like you are, you can go by the Justice Court Clerk's office and file a charge on the person that's, that committed the offense. If someone picks up the phone and calls 911 and the law enforcement officer goes out there, then he's bound by law to file domestic violence on one or both of the individuals involved. And that's at his discretion. He has to determine.
In other words, if my husband, I don't have a husband, if I had one, and we were arguing and got loud and the neighbor calls the law because he hears the racket,
Yes, ma'am.
somebody's going to jail.
It's likely if the officer comes out there and he sees evidence of a domestic violence issue, then he's bound by
Oh,
law.
if you come to blows. If you come to blows.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, if you're hitting each other.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Gosh, I didn't know that.
And that's the most dangerous call a law enforcement officer goes on.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Sure is.
Because you don't know what's going on out there. But truly, some people have nosy neighbors.
They do.
And every time you raise your voice, they'll be calling the cops. My grandchildren were playing in the backyard, jumping off some tires and squealing and acting silly. Wasn't hurting anything. Little subdivision. And one of the neighbors called the law, and they came out there and said it had been reported that women were screaming. Well, it was the kids squealing.
Yeah.
And, all of the women in the house, me and my daughter-in-law, and all of us had to come and show the officer we weren't beat up. It was embarrassing.
That happens.
It was
happens on
embarrassing.
occasion, Yeah.
I'm telling you, that comes from living in a subdivision.
Okay.
It was embarrassing. But I just didn't realize that. Okay, and traffic offenses in the county, if somebody's caught speeding in the county. Now, if it's in town, then who does that? Somebody else?
Well, that's Ripley Municipal.
Okay.
If it's in the city limits, then that will be at Ripley Municipal Court at the courthouse.
Okay, that would be their problem.
Yes.
Okay.
And then in the county, the highway patrol writes someone a speeding ticket. That comes to our court. If
Okay.
any of the deputies or game wardens or any law enforcement anywhere in the county, then it comes to justice court.
Okay. And bond hearings in preliminary hearings. Now, that's all over my head. What is that?
Well, as far as a bond hearing, I've never had a lawyer call for a bond hearing, and I'm not quite sure that that's not just in circuit court. We set bonds. Judge Meeks and I set bonds. Someone is arrested on a felony. They have to come before us within 48 hours. We set their bond. And I have had a lawyer call me more than one time saying, well, Judge, this particular individual is almost indigent, meaning they don't have anything. They're not a threat to anyone. I have spoken with the prosecutor and would you mind lowering this bond? And I have lowered some, and most of the time that depends on also what they charge with. There's some crimes that I would not lower a bond on, depending on what they were. But that's basically what a bond hearing is just between the prosecutor and the defense and the judge. And we don't necessarily have to have that in the courtroom. Now, a preliminary hearing, anyone that's being charged with a felony, that felony will be bound over to the grand jury for the grand jury to return a true or no true bill. And so before the grand jury meets, that person that's being charged has a right to ask for a preliminary hearing, which is held in justice court. And what the preliminary hearing does is the prosecution releases to the defense attorney what their evidence is. And you hear that, you hear the evidence, and each side will argue that he should not be bound over or he should be bound over. Mm-hmm. And so when the trial's over, then you issue your ruling. You know, you tell them you feel like there's enough evidence there for it to be presented to the grand jury, or it's not. So that's what a preliminary hearing is.
You know, I read that a grand jury had like 24 people. I didn't know that. So from 12 to 24.
Oh, it's
I
been so
didn't know
long
that.
since I was on one, I don't recall how
I've
many
never
was
been
on
on
mine.
one. Never been on one. But I read that on Google. Google tells you all kind of stuff. There's some things good about that thing, and there's some things not. Okay. And you do felony criminal cases and issue search warrants. You know, as a judge in a small setting where everybody's kin to everybody, you're kin to everybody, aren't you?
A lot, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And if you're not kin to him, you probably went to school with him.
That's
Yeah.
possible.
How can you, I mean, what do you do when they come in your court and it's somebody you know?
Well, it can be stressful. You know, I've had to rule against people that I hated to rule against. You know, but that's just part of it. You've got to be fair and impartial. That's in your oath that you take, that you're fair and impartial.
Not fun, huh?
Now, if it's, you always have the discretion, if you feel like it's too close to you, you are really required to recuse yourself from that particular case and let another judge hear it. Or that be Judge Meeks, or where that be a judge from out of the county. Now, you know, you're bound by your oath to do that also. If you got a personal involvement in it, you can't hear
Can't do it.
No, ma'am.
Can't do it. Who does divorces?
Well, that's in Chancery Court.
Chancery.
Yes, ma'am. And that's all I know about a divorce, and I don't plan on knowing any
I
more
don't
about
either.
one.
I don't either. Never experienced it, thank the Lord. I just, this has been very informative. I didn't realize how much I didn't know till I started trying to write these questions.
Well, like I told you in the beginning, I don't want to overcomplicate this job, but by no means do I want to undercomplicate everything, because it is, as I realized after I was elected, it's just a lot more to this job than the average person realizes.
And it's hard too, because small town and you gotta live here. I mean, even,
That's true.
even when you go out of office later in life, you gotta live here.
That's right.
It's hard.
That's right.
It's hard.
And you have people calling you and coming to your house on a regular basis.
That's right.
So, I mean, if you can't deal with that, then you probably don't need to.
Oh, I definitely
know.
don't forget that.
And one thing I will say before we close, I'd just like to give a shout out to all the justice court clerks that work in our office. If it was not for them, I could not do this job. Judge Meeks will tell you the same thing. They're excellent, and people that go up there and deal with them will realize that. But they're just four excellent ladies. So.
That's great. That's great. This is Benny Jackson. When you go August the 8th. That's something. It's just 4 years, and then you just don't know, isn't it?
Well, it's really 3, and it starts all over again if you think about it.
Yeah.
Candidates announced in
That's
January and elections in August, and then whoever's elected will be sworn in January. So
That's something to think about. Something to think about. Benny Jackson, August the 8th. He's experienced. He's already, he's judge now. But do you remember Benny Jackson running for Justice Court Judge in the north half? appreciate you watching. I do appreciate you coming today.
Well, I appreciate you asking me. Thank you.
And I appreciate the information, because now that, if I don't know, a lot of folks don't know.
It's possible, yeah, that, you
Probably
know,
so.
I think it's,
I'm dumber than most, but now
No.
there's a lot of us out there. Well, this is
thank you for having
Daryl
me.
at Daryl's Little Corner. Appreciate you tuning in. May God bless.